Ron was my first and only love. We were high school sweethearts and stayed together through college, getting engaged at 21 with plans to marry at 23. His bond with my sister Alina was strong, something I initially viewed positively, especially compared to the fraught in-law relationships splattered across the internet. I overlooked peculiar signs, like Alina's partners being unreasonably jealous, dismissing my gut feelings as mere insecurities. However, my intuition was correct all along, and I was naive to ignore it. The depth of their betrayal became painfully clear on what should have been the happiest day of my life. If you had asked me prior, I wouldn't have believed that those closest to me could concoct such a cruel plan, let alone execute it in front of hundreds at my wedding. The realization hit when Ron blocked my contact on every platform on our wedding day. The despair was unbearable as I learned from Alina's then boyfriend that she was pregnant, likely with Ron's child. A fact she might have twisted to deceive both of us. After leaving numerous unanswered messages for Ron, detailing everything I had been told, it dawned on me that he might never see them, potentially trapping him in a lie with Alina. The following year was a blur of heartache, during which I slowly rebuilt my life. Therapy, new friends, and a new apartment helped piece me back together. As time passed, the events felt more like a distant nightmare. At 26, I realized I wasn't ready for marriage. But life has a way of moving forward, and I found happiness with Nick, who is everything Ron was not. Together, we are planning a future, moving in together and advancing our relationship. My life has stabilized, noticeably calmer without Ron's chaotic presence. Yet, if everything had been fine, I wouldn't be sharing this story. A reflection on overcoming betrayal and rediscovering personal strength and clarity. When I received a call from an unfamiliar number, I hesitated before answering. To my surprise, it was Ron on the other end of the line. His voice was shaky, almost as if he had been crying, and he wasted no time in apologizing for everything that had happened between us. Caught completely off guard by the call and his emotional state, I barely managed a subdued in response. He went on to explain that he had only just read the messages I had sent years earlier, which had finally made him understand the depth of his mistakes. He expressed profound regret and desperately wanted to meet to discuss everything face to face. I hesitated, then declined, telling him that after everything he had done, rebuilding trust seemed unimaginable. Surprisingly, he didn't push back. Instead, he ended the call quietly. I thought that was the last I would hear from him, and felt a complex mix of closure and validation, knowing Ron finally recognized the consequences of his actions. However, the situation didn't end there. The following day, my phone exploded with incoming calls and messages from various family members, and shockingly from Alina too. Each conversation was more accusatory than the last. They berated me for allegedly ruining what they considered a happy and developing relationship between Ron and Alina. My mother accused me of bitterness, reinforcing my suspicions that Ron had confronted Alina after our call, causing significant turmoil between them. Despite these accusations, I harbored no sympathy for Alina, seeing her predicament as the direct result of her dishonesty and disloyalty. This onslaught of criticism brought a new wave of stress, and I felt isolated despite the support from those close to me. To clear the air and ensure no details were left ambiguous, I decided it was crucial to discuss everything openly with Nick, who had been aware of only fragments of the whole saga. After a thorough conversation where I laid out the details, the deceit, the wedding day fiasco, and the latest developments with Ron, Nick's reaction was of unwavering support and understanding. He could see why I felt so betrayed by my family's lack of empathy and their harsh judgment. Surprisingly, Nick suggested that perhaps I should meet with Ron after all, to hear what he had to say, face to face. Despite my reservations, I found myself agreeing to this idea, thinking it might finally put to rest any lingering questions or unresolved feelings. I reached out to Ron using the same number he had called me from, and after a brief exchange, we arranged to meet a few days later when he was scheduled to visit my city. As this tangled web of past and present emotions continues to unfold, I promise to keep you updated. When I met Ron, it confirmed many suspicions. Alina had indeed used Ron for his financial stability, contrasting sharply with her former boyfriend, who was still navigating his college years. Their relationship, which had once seemed based on mutual affection, turned out to be fraught with toxicity and manipulation, particularly after their engagement, an engagement that seemed to have been motivated more by financial security than genuine love. Alina's transformation from a seemingly supportive partner to someone who was merely using Ron for his financial resources was not just unexpected, but devastating for Ron. The stakes were high post-marriage, as he stood to lose a significant portion of his assets if they were to divorce. This looming threat had kept him on edge, but the discovery of a text I had sent years earlier shifted everything. This old message reignited his suspicions about Alina's fidelity. Driven by the need for clarity, Ron decided to have their son undergo a DNA test, which revealed the truth he dreaded. The child was not his. Confirming his fears pushed him to take decisive action. He confronted Alina, expelled her from their home, and initiated the divorce proceedings. This drastic change forced Alina to move back into my parents' house, stripping her of the opulent lifestyle she had grown accustomed to and leaving her in a precarious financial situation. Ron reached out to me during this tumultuous time, wanting to meet to express his gratitude for the unintended role my old message had played in unveiling the truth. In our meeting, he shared his profound regrets about our past relationship and pondered over the potential outcomes had things been different between us. I responded candidly, highlighting that the primary reason our relationship had failed was his inability to remain faithful. It appeared that only at that moment did he truly grasp the magnitude of his errors. As he absorbed my words with a subdued, embarrassed demeanor, our conversation was laden with heavy emotions. And after expressing what needed to be said, I chose to leave, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. This confrontation with Ron sparked a deep reflection about my ties with my own family, especially given their continued support for Alina. Despite her evident wrongdoings, their unwavering allegiance to her, even in the face of her deceitful behavior, deeply troubled me. It forced me to reconsider the genuineness of our familial bonds and whether their affection was conditional, dependent solely on Alina's presence and favor in their lives. To gain some perspective and escape the familial drama, Nick and I decided on a spontaneous road trip, which extended over 3 weeks. This break from my usual environment was not just a breath of fresh air, but a revelatory experience that shed light on my parents' true characters and their perception of me compared to Alina. It became increasingly clear that they had always viewed me as merely a placeholder for Alina, someone to fill the gap whenever she was absent. This recurring pattern of favoritism was not only hurtful but profoundly eye-opening. Upon our return, my parents' overly affectionate demeanor seemed suspicious and disingenuous. After discussing with my cousin, who provided a more honest perspective, I learned that their sweetness was a facade aimed at manipulating me into becoming a temporary caretaker for Alina's son until she decided to return. Armed with this knowledge, I realized I needed to take drastic measures to protect my emotional and mental well-being. I decisively cut ties by blocking their numbers, a painful but necessary step to prevent further emotional manipulation. Back in the city, I discovered that Ron, too, was dealing with the repercussions of his decisions. Having spent a significant amount on legal fees for the divorce and alimony, he sought to move back with his parents but was rebuffed. This outcome, while severe, seemed a fitting consequence for his actions. Throughout these ordeals, my ability to empathize with Alina remained null, given her continuous manipulation and the chaos she had wrought. This entire episode, painful as it was, served as a critical learning experience about setting boundaries and recognizing the true nature of relationships, whether familial or romantic. Navigating the complexities of family caregiving, I find myself in a particularly challenging situation. At 27, living with my 29-year-old husband, we've taken on the responsibility of caring for my 58-year-old mother who was diagnosed with early-onset dementia about a year ago. This condition means she can no longer live alone safely. She enjoys her days, watching her favorite movies and playing card games. but she's vulnerable to forgetting her surroundings and could potentially cause accidents like starting a fire. The bulk of the caregiving has fallen on me, largely because of my nursing background, which my family seems to think naturally equips me for this enormous task. However, caring for my own mother is profoundly different from professional nursing. It's emotionally and physically draining in a way I wasn't fully prepared for. My only sibling, James, 36, has historically been absent from the caregiving scene. He lives with his wife, 35, and their two children, ages 11 and 8. Despite my repeated requests in the past, James frequently cited his children's needs and his busy schedule as reasons he couldn't help. However, over the past month, I've pressed harder for his involvement, emphasizing that caregiving should not be my sole responsibility. After all, she is his mother too. Reluctantly, James has started to take our mother out every Sunday for coffee and a walk in the park, which she immensely enjoys. It not only gives her a change of scenery and some much-needed enjoyment, but it also provides my husband and me with a brief respite from the 24/7 demands of caregiving. Unfortunately, this arrangement has sparked tension with James's wife, who feels that by taking James away every Sunday, I am stealing precious time he should be spending with her and their children. She has voiced her frustration, claiming that these outings leave James too tired to help around their home or engage with their kids afterwards. In response to her complaints, I pointed out that the care needs of our mother are not negotiable. It's unfair for me and my husband to shoulder the entire burden when James is perfectly capable of contributing. When she suggested that we place our mother in a nursing home to ease the load, I explained that the financial cost of such care was beyond our means unless she and James were willing to share the expenses, which they were not interested in, preferring to allocate their resources elsewhere. This led to a heated exchange where I bluntly told her that if James could not contribute financially to our mother's care, then his continued involvement in her weekly outings was non-negotiable. She labeled me as unreasonable for insisting on James's help. But maintaining our mother's quality of life and sharing the caregiving duties is essential, not just for her well-being, but for ours as well. The situation remains tense, and while I understand that this arrangement may cause some inconvenience for James's family, it's crucial. They recognize the importance of shared responsibility in family caregiving. This experience has not only highlighted the need for family solidarity, but also the importance of compassion and understanding in navigating the care of a loved one with a debilitating condition. The situation with my brother James helping out with our mother, who has early onset dementia, is increasingly challenging. James only assists for a few hours once a week, which is frankly the bare minimum considering the situation. After these brief outings, he's often too exhausted to engage with his own family or help around his house. While I understand that his exhaustion might cause friction at home, managing these personal responsibilities is something he and his wife need to navigate. They chose to have a family, and balancing these commitments is part of that choice. On my end, I'm providing nearly continuous, full-time care for our mother. This involves not only a significant emotional toll, but also a financial one, as I'm covering all her expenses. Under these circumstances, my sister-in-law's lack of empathy and her complaints about the situation seem particularly unfair. She hasn't made any effort to truly understand the demands of caring for someone with dementia, which only adds to the strain. This caregiving arrangement is not sustainable. It's crucial that James understands the need for him to take on more responsibility. The care needs of our mother are not going to lessen. They will only intensify as her condition progresses. We need to find a long-term solution that doesn't leave me shouldering the bulk of the care and associated costs. It's not just about what's fair. It's about ensuring our mother has the best care possible, and that it's provided in a way that doesn't completely disrupt any one family member's life. If my sister-in-law continues to resist this necessary involvement from James, perhaps it would be eye-opening for her to take on the care duties herself for a short period. This might give her a better appreciation of what's involved and why it's so important that the responsibility is shared more equitably. Moreover, during a personal occasion like the anniversary with my boyfriend, the need for a bit of happiness and recognition became painfully clear. I had planned a small surprise for him, bringing breakfast, a favorite plant, and chocolates to celebrate our 4 years together. His response, however, was not what I expected. He seemed upset and preoccupied, which was disheartening. I had hoped for a moment of joy and connection, but instead, I found myself explaining why I was so hurt by his lack of enthusiasm. As I stood by the door, waiting while he attended to other things, the sadness overwhelmed me. I had only wanted to make the day special, to bring a little happiness to us both. His distracted, minimal response made me question whether my expectations for our anniversary were too much, or if the stress of our daily lives was simply spilling over into what should have been a happy occasion. In both these scenarios, the common thread is the need for greater understanding and support. Whether it's sharing the caregiving responsibilities for a family member with dementia or recognizing the effort put into maintaining our personal relationships, it's clear that empathy and shared effort are crucial. Moving forward, it will be important for everyone involved, my family and my partner, to communicate openly and support each other more effectively to navigate these challenges. When I decided to surprise my boyfriend on our 4th anniversary by showing up at his place with breakfast, a plant, and chocolates, I certainly didn't anticipate his reaction. He greeted me with a frown, which took me aback. His sarcastic apology for not meeting my expectations because I had woken him up stung, especially since he mentioned he hadn't slept well. Honestly, I wasn't expecting any grand celebration or gifts from him. All I hoped for was a simple hug, a kiss, and perhaps a thank you. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and his demeanor left me so disheartened that we couldn't even enjoy the breakfast I brought over. I left feeling upset, questioning whether I was wrong for trying to surprise him. Thank you to everyone who has shared their thoughts on this situation. Your insights have been valuable. Addressing some questions and concerns, my boyfriend is a freelancer with a flexible schedule. He has been managing insomnia, but told me he had been waking up around 8 or 9 recently, which is why I thought 9 wouldn't be too early. Initially, my plan was to leave the presents in his mailbox and text him. But I got carried away with excitement and decided to see his reaction in person. In hindsight, I realized I should have stuck to the original plan. Regarding the keys to his place, I once had a set, but he took them back when he got a cat. His mother now looks after the cat when he's not around. Some of you have expressed concern about this, wondering why he didn't just make another copy of the keys for me. Honestly, we didn't think it was necessary, and I don't see it as a red flag. As for suspicions of cheating due to noises I heard from his room, I want to clarify that he was simply getting dressed and settling in after waking up. I trust him completely in that regard. After our initial misunderstanding, we had a discussion where we both acknowledged our overreactions. He apologized for making me feel unwelcome and explained that his mood would have been different had he been more rested. He appreciated the gesture, which reassured me of his feelings. Reflecting on this, I realized that understanding each other's morning routines and sleep schedules is crucial, especially when planning surprises. While many might be up and active by 9 in the morning, his freelance lifestyle allows him more flexibility. If roles were reversed and he surprised me at an unusually early hour, my reaction might also be less than ideal. Going forward, we both agreed to communicate more clearly about our schedules to avoid such misunderstandings in the future. This experience, though bittersweet, has definitely taught us more about navigating the complexities of our relationship.